Welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly educational podcast. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist and nutritional blood microscopist. Today is Monday, February 21st, 2022, and this is podcast number 117, which is going to be on iodine. So normally, iodine is only associated with our thyroid gland, and we've all heard how important it is for our thyroid. In fact, the main usage of iodine in the body, most of it goes to the thyroid gland, but there's a lot more that needs to be known about iodine, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. I also provided a link in the newsletter to a thyroid video I did a while ago. In that video, I talked about fluorine, chlorine, and bromine, so I was utilizing the periodic table and explaining how they substitute for iodine in the thyroid gland. So for those of you that have access to the newsletter, that'll be essentially a follow-up video. Now, this podcast depicts other benefits for iodine. So first off, iodine is a trace mineral, and what that means is you really don't need a lot of it. But the other uses of iodine are quite important. In fact, every cell in the body utilizes iodine. But like I said before, the thyroid uses most of the iodine. They're the biggest iodine hog. Now, if you don't have leftover iodine after your thyroid grabs most of it or all of it, then you have an iodine deficiency, even though your thyroid functioning will be optimum. You can still be iodine deficient. In fact, a lot of people are. So iodine goes to these other cells after the thyroid grabs what it wants. People with thyroid issues tend to either take a Synthroid or they look at their T4 hormone numbers. And both T4 hormone and Synthroid, that's really not an active form of iodine. In fact, the 4 in T4 means 4 iodine atoms per molecule. The T4 and the Synthroid, they need the liver and the kidneys to activate this thyroid hormone known as T4. That's why it's very important to have healthy liver and kidneys, because there's this link to how we utilize iodine. Now, the RDA, or the recommended daily allowance for iodine, is way too low. The number that's reported is 150 micrograms per day. You can easily do 10 times that and even up to 100 times that. So you can easily do 1,500 micrograms per day. In fact, a lot of people that live on coasts, like in Japan, they typically get 100 times that 150 micrograms. So they're consuming 15,000 micrograms per day, not 150. And what happens is they have very low incidences of thyroid problems. Now, the best source for iodine is sea kelp and other ocean foods. That is absolutely the best. The reason that's the best is a lot of our soils are depleted from iodine, and the farmers typically put in, say, nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, but they're not adding iodine. And therefore, normally good foods for iodine, like strawberries and eggs, especially remember the pasture-raised organic eggs, they still don't have as much iodine as they had 50, 60, 70 years ago. Now, one thing to remember is cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale and cauliflower, they deplete the iodine in your body. So eating too many of those will probably trigger the need for you to supplement or to eat more ocean foods if you're eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables. Another thing I want to point out is there is no iodine in sea salt. It would make perfectly logical sense to think that sea salt would have iodine since the kelp is from the sea and these ocean fish, obviously from the sea, and they have iodine. Why wouldn't sea salt have iodine, but it does not have iodine? So what I recommend, if you want to get iodine from salt, just buy iodized salt and use it that way. I put a little bit in my coffee every morning. So one thing I want to mention, and this is one of the most important points to this podcast, is there's a very simple deficiency test that you can do to determine if you're iodine deficient. And I love all these things like looking at eyebrows to determine problems and looking at your nails for calcium issues. So the eyebrows are actually a great test for thyroid problems. But simple test for iodine deficiency, buy some iodine in the store. It'll be an orangish yellow liquid, and you rub a small amount on the inside of your arm or pretty much anywhere on your skin with a cotton swab or a cotton ball. So you'll make like a 1-inch little circle on some part of your body, but typically the inside of your arm, and then cover it with a Band-Aid for 1 hour. Now, when you cover it, it should be orangish yellow. You've stained your skin. But if that color is gone in 1 hour, you're deficient in iodine, which means your body absorbed it. Okay, so that's a very important test, and I encourage everyone to do that test because you can be iodine deficient and have a great thyroid. It's just that your thyroid is taking it all. Now, some benefits of iodine that people don't realize, so this goes above and beyond the thyroid. Iodine detoxifies you from mercury and lead. So these are heavy metals. They're very toxic, and a lot of people have heavy metal toxicity. They ask me what they can do. I typically suggest eating cilantro, but I also recommend iodine, right? So mercury poisoning can also come from just eating too much tuna. The larger animals eat the smaller animals. We've got mercury contamination in the ocean, so it multiplies the larger the fish. So people that eat a lot of tuna and even large salmon can develop a mercury toxicity. It's a great way to remove these heavy metals just by consuming iodine. What happens is the iodine will bind with the mercury and lead, and then you urinate it out. That is a lot less painful than utilizing something called chelating agents. Now, iodine will also remove excess fluorine and bromine, and I talk about this in the video that's linked in the newsletter. So fluorine and bromine are essentially a problem for our thyroid. So if you take in excess iodine, you can get rid of this excess fluorine and bromine. Another very important benefit of iodine, and this is for you ladies out there, iodine shrinks cysts, C-Y-S-T-S, cysts, breast cysts, uterine cysts, ovary cysts. This is very, very anti-cancer. We all know that the cancers in those areas typically start as cysts, and they are also estrogen related. So iodine will lower estrogen levels or at least balance them. But it is very important for those of you out there with cysts or cancers. Iodine is so important at shrinking the cysts, and you can determine if you're iodine deficient just by rubbing some on your skin. Iodine also reduces something known as skin tags and warts, and linked to this is it helps break down scar tissue. So you can apply that iodine you bought at the store where you perform a little test. You can apply that directly to a scar, and you will notice that it will break down the scar tissue. And then also linked to the estrogen and menopause. So when estrogen levels are higher, that's linked to menopause for women. Iodine will reduce hot flashes. And a lot of women ask me, what can I do with these hot flashes? And normally you have to go through it and live through it. But iodine will reduce hot flashes. So that's another tool in your arsenal. Now, that's all I have for this week's podcast. Please subscribe and leave a comment. And as always, thanks for listening.